All right. So hopefully you're all here to learn about what to do with historical data.
You're good to go.
Awesome. So yeah, my talk is avoid the data graveyard. What to do with historical data. This is not specifically a ServiceNow talk, but since this is a ServiceNow event, I've tailored it a little bit to ServiceNow specifically. So there's some philosophical elements here, and there's also some ServiceNow related practical stuff. Um, but yeah, let's just get right into it. So a little bit about me. My background is software engineering. I came to ITSM actually fairly recently in my career, and actually, I'm not. I don't have a ServiceNow background. Most of you probably have way more ServiceNow experience than I have. I came to ITSM through a company called Sharewell Software. Um, when I worked there, ServiceNow was the big bad empire that we were fighting against. Um, that was my first exposure to what ServiceNow was as a company, as a platform, that sort of thing. And then after I left Sharewell, obviously I learned more about what ServiceNow was, and here we are. I have my own company called Synapse Software. We do data migration from ITSM platforms from one platform to another, sometimes from ServiceNow, sometimes to ServiceNow. Um, and I guess I would call myself a data archival enthusiast. I don't know what else you would call yourself when you get really into moving data from one system to another and dealing with the question of historical data. So that's what I came up with. So let's talk about. Oh yeah, and this is my board of directors. So I don't just have a dog. I have three cats and one dog. Um, so let's talk about why you might have historical data. Um, thing number one is you might be going from, say, ServiceNow to a local database, maybe to do some local reporting, something like that. Um, we'll touch on this a little bit, but we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on it because we only have, well, 13 minutes left. You might be going from ServiceNow to ServiceNow. Maybe you're doing a back to box project, and you want to make sure that all of the data you've put together in the original instance doesn't start cluttering and crowding the new instance. And there are some complexities related to that. You might be switching from another ITSM tool to ServiceNow. You may have outgrown your previous ITSM tool. It might be going away, like Sharewell is, and you might be moving to ServiceNow. And the question is, what do you do with all the data from your old tool? And then, of course, you might be moving from ServiceNow to another tool. Not right now, of course, but someday, maybe. Who knows? Um, all right. So why might you need historical data? And this is a little bit of a different question. Obviously, migrations. Uh, there is historical data that comes into the equation, but why might you need to keep track of it? And in the interest of time, I'm just going to throw a bunch of acronyms on the screen. So depending on your size of company, the industry that you're in, the type of data that you store in your platform, you might have data retention requirements or other sorts of regulations that basically tell you you need to have data around for a certain amount of time. In some cases, you might not just have that, or you might have that for some part of the data, but some of the data you just want to have around for historical lookup or reporting. So that's valid as well. Um, Regardless of the scenario, I think the same sort of philosophies apply to uh, data retention, archiving, historical access, that sort of thing. And that's kind of the direction that the rest of this talk will go. We'll talk a little bit about my philosophy when it comes to archival, and of course I'm biased, but why I think it's the best strategy, and why it differs from some of the common strategies that have been around for decades and decades. So option number one is CSV. This is, in my mind, this isn't really an option. CSV exports are painful, especially when we're talking about ServiceNow data. There's a lot of data that's stored in not just a single table. So let's just forget about CSV and move on. Full migration is usually one of the first things, the first real options that gets talked about. Um, but this is wrought with challenges as well. If you're going from one ServiceNow instance to another ServiceNow instance, like a back to box project, This kind of defeats the purpose because if you're trying to move all of the data in as close to the original format as possible, well, that means your destination system has to basically look and behave and be structured the same way as your previous system, and that's not what you're going for. If you're going from a different system to ServiceNow or ServiceNow to a different system, you're going to run into situations where the data probably doesn't even match up. Right? Most systems have something called incident, or more or less matches up with the concept of incident, but a lot of the similarities end there. When you get into like CMDB and asset management, um, the way that the data is stored and the way that the data is structured and related to other data in the system, it just starts to spiral into this tangled web of incompatibility. So this is challenging, can be costly, time consuming, expensive. Um, I guess that's costly. Um, but at a certain point, can you even say that it's the same data anymore? And that starts to wear away at the data retention, the compliance requirements, that sort of thing. Oh, and then what about attachments? ServiceNow stores attachments in a very different way from every other system that I've worked with. And there are some other systems that have also stored attachments in very different ways from all of the other systems that I've worked with. So if you want to hold on to attachments, that's a giant question mark. That this full migration approach, it's probably not the best way. So again, I'm biased because I think my suggestion is the best way. But my suggestion is option three: archive in the original format, as close to the original format as possible, with a small migration. Right? You probably won't be able to get away from just leaving all of the data in the original format or in a database off in the corner somewhere. You are still operating, right? You don't just turn off an old system one day, start with a new system the next day, and have a clean slate, right? It's very unlikely. Some companies do run two systems in parallel. That can be a way to get around this issue, but in all likelihood, you're going to want to shut down one system, carry over open incidents, pending changes, scheduled changes, those sorts of things, into the new system, and then move on. Kind of with a baseline amount of data to hit the ground running. But you still want to have all of your old data lying around as well, and that's where the archiving comes in. So my recommendation is that you kind of, rather than trying to solve this giant problem with one solution, kind of break it into two smaller problems and then solve each problem individually. So handle the archiving one way, handle the migration a different way. And what that looks like is, so I'm kind of combining that first slide into one giant web at this point. So depending on where your data is, if it's in ServiceNow or a different system, um, pull that all into an archive. Anything you're using, anything that you need to hold on to for any reason, just pull it all down into. I made it look like a database. It's maybe database with asterisk, but database like thing. And then you have that database available to you. You can just go read the records directly. You can pull it into another ServiceNow instance. You can pull, some of the records, and because you have the full archive, if you determine that you haven't pulled everything that you need over into the new system, you still have the opportunity to go back and pull in additional data as needed. Or if you're pulling it into either well, you already have a local database for local reporting, or if you're pulling it into another system, you have that option as well. Some tools that can help you do this. This is probably not an exhaustive list. These are just the ones that I'm aware of, that kind of help with parts of this process. On the archiving side, there are tools like Snowmere, and there's actually an open source one that I found, SNDML3. I think it's ServiceNow Data Mart Loader 3. It's an older tool, but it is out there. It's a Java app. You can pull down the code from GitHub and run it, and it works. It works pretty well. Um, Snowmere is a paid tool, it's specifically targeted at the data synchronization workflow, um, intended for local reporting, but you can also use it to just archive a ServiceNow instance as well. And then we have our own tool. This is not a sales pitch, but we do have our own tool called Cortex. You can ask me about that later. Um, on the migration side, there are a few tools that help with that. There's a company called Precision Bridge. They have a tool that is specifically targeted at the migration workflow. There's another one, Help Desk Migration. They claim to have support for ServiceNow. I haven't used them specifically, um, and they advertise a lot of what I would say are smaller ITSM systems as their primary support. But they do claim to have support for ServiceNow as well, so they're a potential option. And then of course our own tool. Now, one of the things that I think is really important when it comes to archiving data is being able to see the data in as close to the original format as possible, including uh, relationships between, let's say, an incident and the related CIs, or notes and journal entries and emails and that sort of thing, and of course attachments. Um, Ideally, looking the same as it did in the original system, but at least giving you some level of confidence that what you're looking at is in fact the thing that you intended to look at, and looks at least similar enough to the previous system um, that you have that level of confidence that you're making good decisions, and especially in the audit or compliance use case, being able to say that yes, this is what we were looking at a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And as far as I know, we're the only platform that does that. Again, not a sales pitch, so we'll move on from that slide. What should you archive? This is probably the biggest, hardest decision in this whole process. Um, and there's no one right answer for everyone. It's going to be business dependent. The first thing I would say is probably not everything. There are some systems out there that make it really easy to just get a database export, get a database download, and then restore it to a local SQL server. If that applies to you, absolutely do that because it's way easier than trying to go through the rest of the questions. Um, but there are also lots of systems where you have to pull things down through API, and you do have to make a decision. And every new thing that you want to pull down takes additional time, cost, uh, complexity, that sort of thing. So, first thing, data required by policies. That's absolutely number one. You don't want to miss out on data that you actually need. And then, in to use ServiceNow terminology, related items and related lists. So it's not just the base record; it's everything that's uh, connected to. Um, and then in ServiceNow, especially, there's this concept of the table hierarchy and parent and child tables. So that's important as well. And then attachments. Attachments are the sneaky one that everybody forgets about. Don't feel bad if you've forgotten about it. Everyone I talk to, it's always, oh, wait a minute. What about attachments? What do we do for attachments? That's absolutely something that you want to remember, and make sure that whatever archive strategy you're going with, you make sure you get attachments. And I do see a couple of questions. If we have time, hopefully I'll be able to answer them. Um, and then metadata. So I mentioned like view alike. If you want to be able to see things that similarly to the way that you saw them in the original platform, a lot of that is stored in the metadata, and so you want to have that around. We do have a planner tool that helps you determine what to download and how to make sure that it all gets downloaded and that sort of thing. Uh, so, in summary, determine what you're using from your current tool. Determine what to archive, then archive it. And then if you want to move something into your new platform, determine what actually does need to move into your new system. This could be, recent incidents. This could be open incidents, right? Determine what that cutoff is so that you're not trying to pull everything into a new system. And then do the migration. And then think about what else you might want to do with it. Do you want to be able to see historical data from within your current tool through like an iframe or something like that? So that's an option. Um, You can contact me through these means. We will be at HEI Service and Support World in May. That's the same week as Knowledge. So if you're going to be at Knowledge, just walk across the street and come visit us. And that's me. Now, I'll hang out for a little bit and answer some questions. I know there's closing, but happy to answer some questions. Um, Do any of these tools actually capture related audit data tied to the records being archived? Um, that is a decision that you need to make. Some of them do. Typically, they're stored as related records. So even if through the configuration UI, there's just a checkbox that says store audit data related to a particular record. It is stored in a table somewhere. And I can certainly say for our tool and for Precision Bridge, possibly Snow Mirror as well. There are interfaces that basically tell you what the related tables are to the base table that you're looking at, and then you can just check some checkboxes and include that in the sync or the archive. Okay, when you say archive, where are you archiving them and in what format? My recommendation is pull it down into a database. Um, and most of these tools support many different database engines because once you have it in a database, then you can do any sort of searching, um, filtering, those sorts of things, reporting, that sort of thing. Archiving in a data lake. From my perspective, a data lake is just a really sophisticated database. So I'm not going to say yes. I'm not going to say no. Definitely an option. Um, that could be driven by business requirements. Data lake, in my mind, tends to imply that you're correlating it with a bunch of other data from elsewhere in the business. So if that's something that you want to do, that's always a possibility. Um, yeah. Let's see. Are you recommending ServiceNow's own archive tool? I actually haven't used ServiceNow's own archive tool, so I don't know that I would not recommend it. But I'm just not familiar with it. Any other questions? All right, I don't see any. So thank you for letting me talk about data archival. And oh, here's another one: attachment migration. Um, what I typically do, so I'm a little paranoid when it comes to data. So I like to pull things down in the original format that they were stored in the original platform. So I'm just going to use the ServiceNow example because this is a ServiceNow conference, and you might be more familiar with how ServiceNow stores attachments than with other systems. So ServiceNow stores attachments in the database. They are broken up into chunks and stored in a table somewhere, but they're stored in the database. So my recommendation would be pull down that attachments table, and then you can always extract the attachments from there. That's my preference. There is an API that allows you to get attachments directly correlated to a particular record. So that's an option as well if you want to go the API route, and you just want to export, say, all of the attachments related to a particular record, just store them as files on disk. Um, totally fine. Again, driven by business requirements. But my preference is always pull down an exact replica of the database as much as possible, and then once I have the data, I can do whatever I want with it. That's kind of my philosophy. Is once you have data, you can do whatever you want with it, but if you don't have the data or if you have it in a different format, then you're limited to, whatever the format is that you have it. All right. Thank you all very much and have a great rest of the conference.